We have been spending many hours on the Line of Fire broadcast talking about racial injustice, talking about reconciliation, talking about what is real, talking about what is perceived. And now with more killing of cops, this time a black man killing 2 white police officers and a black police officer, and then wounding 3 others, one of them critically. The questions come before us. What's really happening? What are the facts about police brutality? Where is dangerous rhetoric being used to stir up hostile emotions? A few days back, I was online researching some things and came across an interview that Heather McDonald did on the Rush Limbaugh show about a brand new book of hers, The War on Cops. So I thought, all right, if Rush was promoting it, it's probably pretty hot right now. I went to Amazon, and lo and behold, there it was, the number 2 bestseller on Amazon. I immediately downloaded it, started to read it with real interest. Heather is the Thomas W. Smith Fellow at the Manhattan Institute and author of this new book, The War on Cops. She's a frequent media guest on Fox and CNN and other national programs. Heather, I know you're slammed with interviews. Thanks for taking a few minutes to join us today.
Thank you for having me on, Michael. I appreciate it.
Now, you have based your book on some massive research that's been done. You're coming at this from an academic viewpoint. Did you have any clue that when your book came out, it would suddenly be one of the hot topics in America?
Well, I certainly am not particularly surprised, though I'm deeply saddened and terrified by these cop shootings because they're just a more extreme version of what officers are getting on the streets in urban areas every day now, thanks to the lies of the Black Lives Matter movement. And the assassinations themselves that we've had this summer are also not new outcroppings of Black Lives Matter hatred, because there were 2 cops assassinated in December 2014 in New York City under the same pall of hatred that has been spread out there. So, what's happening now is just a logical conclusion to the narrative that's been put out there, which is that young black men are at lethal risk from white officers. We shouldn't be surprised if, given the constant fomenting of race hatred and victimology by the academic establishment, by the media establishment, that people are turning now to violence. And it's just a terrifying, terrifying moment for this country.
We've just got a minute before this first break, but you speak of the lies of Black Lives Matter. Give me a for instance.
Well, a larger percentage of white and Hispanic homicide victims are killed by police officers than black homicide victims. 12% of all whites and Hispanics who die by homicide are killed by cops, compared to 4% of black homicide victims who are killed by cops. So if we're going to have a anti-cop Lives Matter movement, it would make more sense to call it White and Hispanic Lives Matter.
All right, so you feel then that even if black Americans can give anecdotal evidence from their own experience, their own upbringing, that somehow things are being wrongly, falsely inflamed, and that studies indicate that things are being wrongly and falsely inflamed?
Absolutely. The police could end all shootings tomorrow, and it would have a negligible effect on the black death by homicide rate. The officers have saved tens of thousands of black lives over the last 2 decades thanks to proactive policing. They're the most Black Lives Matter government agency we've got.
All right, we'll be right back with Heather McDonald, the book, The War on Cops. I'm speaking with author Heather McDonald. She's the Thomas W. Smith Fellow at the Manhattan Institute. To find out more, go to manhattan-institute.org/War on Cops. The new book, national best-selling book, The War on Cops. Heather, right before the break, you said that the police have been the number one force in Black Lives Matter for years, rather than demonizing them or vilifying them, that we should recognize the lives they're saving. What happened in New York City under Rudy Giuliani, and what's happened now under Mayor de Blasio?
Well, Well, in 1990, there were 2,245 homicides in New York City. In 2014, there were 333. That's a drop of 85%. That's virtually unprecedented and unmatched in the country. And what happened was when Mayor Giuliani was elected in 1994, policing was revolutionized nationally. The cops embraced an unprecedented mission, which is to actually prevent crime rather than just respond to it. And they became data-driven, held commanders accountable for crime in their jurisdictions, and they asked officers to become proactive, to go out and make stops at 1 a.m. of a known drug corner if you see a suspect hanging out, hitching up his waistband as if he has a gun. Get out of your car and ask a few questions rather than just drive on by and wait for somebody to get shot. And this revolution that came to be known as the Comstat revolution spread nationally, and policing across the country became data-driven and accountable, and the nation as a whole had a 50% crime drop that's now at risk because officers are backing off of proactive policing, and crime is going up, something that I've dubbed the Ferguson effect. In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio ran for mayor, attacking the cops and putting out lies very similar to what President Obama says, which is that officers are a threat to his biracial son, Dante de Blasio. This is preposterous. Dante de Blasio or any other young black man today faces a minute chance of being shot by a police officer. The risks to urban males today come overwhelmingly from other blacks. In Chicago, for example, as of July 9th this year, there have been a whopping 2,090 people shot. The police, Chicago police, have shot 9 people, virtually all of them armed and resisting arrest. That's 0.4% of all shootings in Chicago. The people that are gunning down children, a 3-year-old boy shot on Father's Day is now paralyzed for life. 3 children under the age of 11 shot on 4th of July. They're black kids, and they're being killed by other blacks.
And you're saying that with the proactive policing that Rudy Giuliani helped implement, that saved many, many, many black lives. And
well, you can do the math. I mean, if homicides had remained at their 1990s levels, and the vast majority of people being victimized by homicide in New York City are black, if we had had 2,245 homicides each year without bringing it down, 10,000 minority males would be dead today who are alive today thanks to the policing revolution that began in New York City and spread nationwide.
And what exactly then do you mean by the Ferguson effect, obviously with reference to the hands up, don't shoot rhetoric that went out with the death of my namesake, Michael Brown, in Ferguson last year? What's the Ferguson effect?
The Ferguson effect is the combined phenomenon of officers backing off of proactive policing and crime going up. In big cities last year with large black populations, homicides increased anywhere from 54% in Washington, D.C. to 90% in Cleveland. This should be, I hope Donald Trump makes this a major theme of his speech tonight, that when officers back off of proactive policing, black lives are lost.
And there are major studies that you based your book on, and there were some surprising facts that were uncovered in the studies. What about the likelihood of a black officer pulling the trigger on a black suspect as compared to a white officer doing the same?
Yes, it's remarkable. It completely upsets the Black Lives Matter meme of bad white officer, innocent black suspect. The Justice Department, no less, came out with a study in March 2015 looking at the Philadelphia police department, and found that black and Hispanic officers were more likely than white officers to shoot an unarmed black person under the mistaken impression that that person had a gun. The acting director of the National Institute for Justice found that in the New York Police Department, black officers are 3.3 times more likely to use their weapons at shooting scenes than white officers.
Mm. And Heather, last question. You're, again, approaching this from an academic viewpoint. You obviously care. You made reference to being terrified by what you're seeing now, but you've got degrees from Yale and Stanford University Law School. You've testified before U.S. House and Senate committees. But I imagine that your work is not just being responded to in an academic way. Are you getting some visceral, hateful responses because your narrative is going against the grain of what we're hearing?
Oh, absolutely. I'm absolutely demonized by academics, by the media. The Black Lives Matter chapter in Austin doxed me, a term I hadn't heard of before, but that what means to post my personal information on the web, my home address and home phone number, with the message, racist journalists don't get a free pass. So, yeah, no, this is a true war out there, and people who support the cops are also in the crossfire.
Did you know this might happen when you put the book out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more risky today than questioning the lie that America remains a profoundly racist society. There's too many people with an investment in racial victimology.
Well, Heather, especially in that light, I appreciate your courage in putting this out. I found the book tremendously eye-opening, and the more readers, the more serious discussion it gets, the better, the best. Thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you.
All right. Friends, listen to the specifics. Listen to the specifics without reacting. Look into the points that are raised, and then come to your own conclusions. Again, the book, The War on Cops, the author, Heather McDonald. So to just review some stats that she mentioned, under Rudy Giuliani's leadership in New York City, the homicides dropped from 2,245 a year down to 333, a drop of 85%. And it was by proactive policing. Now, we had a black officer call the show, a few days back, and say that racial profiling is different than prejudicial profiling. In other words, he gave this example. It's 2 a.m. You are in a heavy black drug area. A white guy comes in, pulls up in his car, 2 a.m, gets out of the car, runs up into an apartment, comes back down 2 minutes later. What are you thinking? Probably drug purchase. What else is that white guy doing there, in and out of an apartment, 2 a.m? This is the example the officer gave. The officer then goes up to that person. Excuse me, what were you doing here? I work such and such a place. My colleague can't come in. He's got a hard drive, a flash drive. I need it for work. So I just came by to pick it up. Here it is. I was in apartment 2C, etc. And okay, all clear. Good. So he said that would be proper profiling. In other words, something looks suspicious based on the color of this person's skin at this time in this neighborhood. Something looks suspicious, so we're going to check it out. Prejudicial profiling, though, would be where you say, you start to mistreat the person. You start to immediately find them guilty. You don't even check the thing out, and you are looking at them through biased eyes. That would be different. That would be different. I've been to Israel many times, and especially when you fly El Al, they're going to question you, and suddenly you feel uncomfortable, and they're starting to probe you, and you're just going there for a trip. You're going there to see friends or family. For me, I'm going there to speak at congregations or something. And next thing, and it's true. If my skin was a certain color, if I looked more Arab, and if I had a certain accent, and if they found the slightest thing in my story they weren't comfortable with, next thing they might be taking my luggage apart, literally taking it apart. And it saves lives. So is there a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things? And Heather McDonald has all this data. You might say, hey, she has the data, but I got my life experience. What are you going to tell me about my life experience? I get treated differently because I'm black. So the discussion continues. But if by effective policing, homicides were cut down, and most of those homicides would have been against black Americans, haven't the police then saved many black lives?